I'm watching you guys in the press tour. You're like in love with each other.
There's lots
We
in
are
common.
clicking. First time I've ever seen us sing, I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, no, what's going on?
What is going on?
Absolutely.
Hello. How's it going?
It's good. How about you?
I'm great. I'm great.
We share a release date,
We do indeed.
and the fans are calling it Glicked.
I'm happy for them to call it whatever they want as long as they go to the theatre.
I have to start by saying how brilliant you are. I watched Gladiator last night. It's unbelievable, and you're spectacular.
Thank you very, very much. No,
welcome.
I saw Wicked about 3 weeks ago, New York. Best place to see it. It goes without saying, I just think you're extraordinarily brilliant in the film.
Thank
but just
you.
beyond that, what can't you do?
Oh gosh, no! Coming from you, I've seen you sing on YouTube.
We're starting there.
I'm starting. I have to start there because I'm
This is
sorry.
great.
I am a musical theater nerd, and I saw you sing Les Mis. I did.
Those who follow the path of the righteous shall have their reward.
Yeah, with the dodgy, like, mutton chop.
great.
Yeah, okay.
It was great. No, I'm very excited because I also know that you're doing Merrily, and I'm a big musical theater fan, and that's really cool. I'm very excited.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely share the, like, musical theatre bug, but I feel like I cannot be the person to start that because we're talking about where did your, like, love for musical theatre begin?
I don't know. I mean, it was just something that spoke to me. I was a child, and I would sit there watching The Wizard of Oz and study Judy Garland, and I just remember it being such an escape. I loved music. I loved the storytelling, the marriage of the music and the stories, and seeing my first Broadway show, and just remembering my...
What was that?
It was Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast, great.
But I just remember loving it so much. Yeah, you started in theater.
Started Phantom of the Opera was my beginning,
Yeah.
and then I think I really wanted to be in musical theatre to begin with, and then I realised that I couldn't really dance. So that avenue was slowly but surely taken away from me, and I just gravitated more towards like the Phantoms, the Les Mis, the Miss Saigons, and then realised that I probably didn't have the best voice, and then
No.
acting was the avenue that I went down. But I don't know, I just love the act of being on stage, and like to your point about kind of the fusion of acting and music, and what I think Wicked just does extraordinarily well is this kind of, I just had such a cathartic response to watching it because it's like a celebration of not just the musical itself, but people who like musicals will absolutely, I think, adore it. What was your like start point with Wicked?
Well, I was hunting Mark Platt down for an
Right.
audition. As soon as I found out that it might be happening, I just kind of told my team to be on high alert, please. And I know this has to be earned, so when they start seeing people, can I please go in? I'll do anything.
Wow.
And I worked really hard with a vocal coach and an acting coach to get ready, because Glinda's vocal track is very different than what I usually sing. So
What's the differences?
well, it's very operatic and very classical, sort of
Right.
color altura, which is different from doing just like falsetto and whistle tones. It's just a totally different placement in the voice. So I wanted to train to sound authentic in singing opera, and I started, I think, 2 months or 2.5 months before my first audition. And I don't know, it just went from there.
Yeah.
But how did Gladiator come into your life? Obviously, they just called you and begged you to do it. I mean,
wish that was the
the
case.
process?
It was like, it was different in the sense that like Ridley Scott, the great Ridley
Incredible,
Scott,
yes, yeah.
incredible, is at the point in his career where I think he can, whatever he kind of wants, he generally gets. So the process for getting it was essentially I met Doug Wick and Lucy Fisher. Doug was the producer on the first Gladiator, and they both, I met them at the Sunset Tower, and I was like, that was the first instance that I knew that Gladiator 2 was getting made. So I was, at that point, I felt like deeply privileged that I had this kind of private information. And then I met them, and then it went quiet for a little while, and I was like, they've gone elsewhere, they've gone to somebody else. Then I was on stage at the time, I was doing I was doing Streetcar Named Desire. Thanks.
Which is coming to New York.
It's coming to New York. Yeah.
More questions about
Yeah.
that in a few.
That was on the go at the time, and I was in London. And then got a message from my agent being like, Ridley Scott wants to Zoom. And at that point, I was like, this is fucking great.
Yeah.
And then we spoke for half an hour. Like, it was great. We spoke for 10 minutes about the film, 10 minutes about his dog, and then 10 minutes about the sport that I played growing up. And then like in your head, you're like, of course, there's going to be camera tests, auditions, but there just wasn't any of those things. And
Wow.
you get the call, and then then it all starts in your head.
It was brilliant, and I mean,
Thanks.
it was just such a incredible fit and so moving to watch. It was really beautiful.
Thanks.
Was that the real sword from the original movie?
Yeah.
I want to know so badly.
Yeah,
Was it?
all
of it was.
All of it was, yeah. I think there's like different sizings or whatever, but it's the same. I know. That was exactly my response
That's
when
so
I
cool.
saw it all.
I feel like that must be a very commonly asked question, but I had to ask myself.
Oh, like I'm as much of a fan of the kind of lore
Yeah.
of Gladiator as anybody else. So it was like a weird position to be
Yeah.
in when you're like a fan, but also having to shoulder some
Right.
big old responsibility about what the
I feel
next iteration of it is. And like, I think it ties to the point, like, do you when you were
That pressure is a very specific thing.
but I feel like the pressure is related to actually both films, because
Yeah.
you've got the prestige of the musical on stage and you've got the prestige of Gladiator 1. And like, I want to go back briefly to the audition process. What was that like?
Oh my
What did you do?
I mean, it was really insane. It was kind of a 3.5 month period
wow.
of time.
Where did you
And-
find the time to do that?
Well, I was filming The Voice simultaneously.
Okay.
So I was going from my vocal coach to my acting coach to doing like The Voice live shows. And I remember I was so nervous about my voice being in good shape because my audition was the next day.
And you'd just done The Voice the night before.
And I was on set
Whoa.
doing The Voice, and I asked them to cut the air conditioning because it was so cold on set. They keep it really cold to keep the live audience engaged and, you know, awake and alive. And but it's really cold.
Yeah.
And so I asked them to turn off just because I had to sing opera the next day. It's very high, and I had to sing No One Mourns the Wicked. And people started to know and I was very self-conscious about it. I was like, I'm sorry, it's my fault.
Yeah,
and I was
broken.
I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm going in for this audition.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my first audition, and then I had a callback where I had to do some scenes and some more songs.
Was this with Cynthia Erivo, who's...
Not yet.
Not yet, okay,
She's
right.
the best in the entire
Right,
world, but we actually never
unbelievable.
chemistry read together.
Really?
We never
None of
chemistry
that?
read together, no.
Wow.
My first callback was still alone, and they just gave me more of Glinda's material and more songs from the second movie, some of the more emotional bits for her, just to see how it felt. And we played for a while. I stayed a long
And
time.
is this you and John?
Me and John Chu.
Right.
And then they did chemistry tests a few weeks later. So it was 3 rounds
3 rounds.
for me. And I read with 2 different actresses. I stayed for like 3.5 hours.
Right.
The final day, and I had cried so much. My lashes were like this, kind of. So
What scenes did you do for the like acting callbacks?
The final chemistry read, we did everything. We did
Right.
Popular, we did
Unbelievable.
Defying Gravity, we did For Good, we did the scene. I'm not going to give away too much, but we did one of the scenes
Stuff
leading
from
up
the-
to.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, from the stage show.
Okay.
Because we didn't have a movie script yet.
Okay.
We didn't have one.
Right.
But I took my lashes and I said, and when John was finally like, okay, John Chu, our brilliant director, when he finally was like, we're good, thank you so much. Collect yourself, go to the car, take a deep breath, you did a beautiful job. I was like, thanks everyone, and I left
Here's my
my
lashes.
lashes on the mirror because I left everything else in the room. I was like, why not?
By the sounds of things, you were unbelievably like your heart was invested before that. So how do you, I don't know, how do you cope with the prospect of getting it or not getting it at that point? Do you just kind of leave it in the room? Or
Yeah.
How long did it take for you to find out?
Oh gosh, I mean, it was another 3-4 weeks of waiting after that. And
Whoa.
it felt like 7
rough.
years. Yeah,
Yeah.
it felt really long. But I don't know, I just kind of trusted that I had done the work.
Yeah.
I had prepared as much as I possibly could have. I had a whole pink section in my closet that I had, you know, purchased little things to have a Galindified section. I did everything I possibly could. I left it all, and I knew that if it wasn't meant to be mine, that's okay.
Because you've done everything.
And I love Wicked, and I
Yeah.
just wanted it to be beautiful, even if it wasn't mine.
I'm like a target audience for it in that I like love musicals, and I think it's not just, I think it's not just for people who love musicals or love Wicked, and I think that's a testament to what you guys created. If it was just an original piece that you guys have made, you've made the perfect version of that, I think, because it's
Thank
it's a
you.
really hard thing to step into something that people adore, but also to be yourself and Cynthia at the absolute center of it. It's like a big responsibility. It's a big responsibility that I think you both shoulder extraordinarily well. But did you feel that when you were shooting it, or do you just kind of go into work headspace and go and make
Thank you.
it?
I feel like I could ask you all the same questions.
We got time.
I know we are Glicked, and there's lots
We are
in common,
Glicked.
but there's a lot more in common that
Yeah,
I
totally.
think there's. I feel like I have to echo every single question the same way. But Cynthia is just an absolute brilliant gift of a human being, and I think we tried to keep the pressure out of the room, obviously, as
Yeah.
much as possible, so we could just stay present in the material and in each other and hearing each other and listening to each other.
Pink goes good with green.
Goes well with green.
It so does.
I'm watching you guys in the press tour. You're like in love with each other.
Insufferable, yes. Horrible.
You're
It's bad.
absolutely insufferable. No.
Yeah, the
But
most
you-
annoying.
But that's half of the relationship in Wicked. The first half is the polar opposite. So how do you navigate? Well, I think I know the answer, but I'm curious to know what you're going to say about like how do you navigate both, like the polar opposite of those relationships that exist in the film?
It's funny because even in the very beginning, when they loathe each other, I'm in awe of Elphaba. She has the thing that I dream of having,
Yeah.
which is magic, you know? And I think there's a secret, quiet part of her that does admire certain things about Galinda too.
Yeah.
These women are both strong in very opposite and yet similar ways.
Totally.
And I think they kind of recognize themselves in each other immediately. But I think the thing that makes them think they hate each other is that there are parts that they don't necessarily love about themselves.
Totally.
You know?
They're like sometimes mirror images of each other, and then, as you said, the other times they're the thing that the other person wishes they were.
Right. But what about you? I mean, you must have felt that pressure as well because
Yeah.
how old were you when you first saw Gladiator?
Well, the film came out when I was 4,
Wow.
so my parents didn't let me see it when I was 4.
Right.
And then I watched it with my dad when I was like 13, in and around that age. The only thing I can kind of draw a line between is like doing that and playing Stanley in Streetcar. These are like two performances that have preceded me in like Marlon Brando in Streetcar and Russell in Gladiator. They're extraordinary because the material is so good and because they're talented, but I think you're wrestling between, or I actually wasn't wrestling with the idea of what I wanted to do, but I was wrestling with the idea of how it will be perceived. I think that's my
Right.
big thing as an actor, that I want to have a more complicated answer, but that's the thing that I constantly struggle with, which is I know how I want to go about it, but I also struggle with how my work is perceived, because it's like
Right.
the thing that I want to be proudest of, and there's the thing that I want people to hopefully see as good or moving or whatever it is. But with Gladiator and Streetcar, I made conscious decisions to not watch Streetcar, the film, which is one of my favorite films, when I was preparing for that, and I made the same decision with Gladiator. And I think the clue that I took was from Ridley when he told me he cast me because of normal people. He told me the story where Ridley Scott always watches a bedtime story before he goes to sleep, and at the time when he was casting Gladiator 2, he was watching normal people in bed, which just the image of that is funny to me. But I think the clue that I took in terms of the direction that he wanted me to go was from the work that he'd seen. Like, there's nothing that I've done before that indicates this is your guy for an action, dramatic epic. The work that I've done before is more internalized, and you know when you see like artists or painters that you really admire, you look at like Van Gogh's got a particular style or Vermeer or somebody like that, and nobody's asking Vermeer to paint like Van Gogh or
Right.
anything like that. So I was like, I think actors should be afforded something somewhat similar to that, because obviously you're trying to change the person that you're playing every time. You're not
Right.
trying to change, you're just trying to play the character that's in front of you. But to do that, you're kind of operating from what fulfills you as an artist. And what fulfills me is maybe different to you, or it's different to Russell, or it's different to Marlon Brando, or it's different to, you know what I mean? So I was
Yeah.
like, this is my skill set that I love operating within. So I was trying to bring that quality of performance to something much bigger, and not something that I think you would commonly associate with a film like Gladiator 2.
Well, you
That was the
absolutely
plan.
stunningly did it.
Thank you.
If your son were here, I feel sure he would tell you not to grieve him. For he would not be the boy that you sent away. That boy is dead.
I have so many questions about the stunt coordinating
Yeah.
and the rehearsing of the choreography. You claim that you don't think you could dance, but if you can do what's in this
Oh, I
film...
can't. There's
no,
proof.
but I'm telling you.
Why
but
do you
this
think I was
must be
playing Javert?
No, but this,
Famous dance
this
breaks.
has to be so much harder than that.
It's
Because each sequence had to have been at least like a week of choreography or something.
Yeah, it was. We kind of rehearsed it like you go into these like what feel like airport hangars, and you rehearse
Right,
the
yeah.
choreography for like weeks and weeks and weeks. But I think with anything like that, and I imagine it was similar in Wicked, it's just like time, and you just
How
accumulate
much
it.
time? Like how long
About
of the...
2 months.
Wow.
2 months, but like, look, I was playing like fake swords and fake guns way too.
But you
late
did
in my life.
everything
I was, like,
yourself.
like as much as I could. I had
Right.
like the most fantastic
That's so
stunt double,
thrilling.
Zach, and because the way Ridley shoots, he's shooting like 8 cameras, so you're not typically able to get a stunt double in, because while
Right.
he's on your close up,
Right.
he's also on your back, so you can't like really do a.
Yeah, and I would
a
imagine
swap.
you
I
would
want
also...
to do it
yeah,
as well.
I was going to say,
I
you
mean,
don't
if
seem
you're
like...
gonna do
you'd wanna
Gladiator
take-
2, you wanna be the guy throwing yourself
Yeah.
around.
I mean, it's so physically strenuous. I was just like thinking, oh my God, each and every single one of these fight sequences, they're so intricate, and it's just so incredible
just
to watch.
fun. Like I mean,
Yeah.
if it's a surprise to anybody that I'm doing this, it's not a surprise to me in the
No.
sense that not the scale of the film. Just like I've always wanted to do something like a Gladiator, or something where
Mm-hmm.
you get the opportunity to kind of exercise a different sort of physicality, but of course it's like strenuous and physically taxing,
Yeah.
but it's also like
The most rewarding.
super fun, because you
Yeah.
can tell immediately if a fight it's one of those things in performance where you can tell quickly if it's working or not, because generally you're not getting hit in the face. If you're getting hit in the face, it means that the choreography's gone
Yeah.
gone wrong. But how long did you guys work together before you actually got in front of camera?
We had a pretty long rehearsal process.
Right.
We had rehearsal tracks that we recorded in the studio. Just
I've
to
heard
kind of-
about this. Did you
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and Cynthia went into the studio yourself, or like?
When we first got there, we recorded our rehearsal tracks just so that we
Right.
would have something to rehearse to, and John Chu, our director, would have something to camera block to, and to
Okay.
do like the storyboards and everything. But we did sing everything live on set.
Wow.
But it was fun to get there and kind of lay down the songs and learn our parts, even though we've known them since I was
Nonsense,
10.
Yeah.
But it was fun to have that time to also just to get into their bodies. I remember the first day I got there, I really wanted to wear Glinda's shoes right away.
Yeah.
Just because it really helps find the body and the physicality.
Totally.
And we rehearsed, I think, for 3.5 months before we got anything on
3.5
camera.
months.
Yeah.
Wow.
There were many different versions of Dancing Through Life. And
That's an
do
amazing
you know Johnny
sequence.
Bailey?
I've met Johnny Bailey a couple of times. He's just
He's
the most
He's so brilliant in this.
extraordinary man. Yeah, he's so brilliant in it.
Yeah, he really is. He's extraordinary. But he was shooting at the same time as this rehearsal period was happening.
Right.
So he didn't even really get to rehearse with us that much. So he was flying back and forth between shooting another show and
Jumping
rehearsing.
into rehearsals. Yeah. So how did you shoot? Do you know the like revolving?
Yes, the
How
tornado
does
wheel.
that? Talk me through this, please.
Very scary. Very
can imagine.
big thing. It's
Right.
a big wheel of death,
Wheel
and
of-
it's just kind of is really insane. But our incredible choreographer Chris Scott and all these amazing dancers just had so much time to experiment and play in this big rotating thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just felt very scary to watch.
Yeah.
I'm nervous in general, so just standing there watching, I was in awe.
That's interesting to me because your
Incredible.
performance doesn't feel like it has any of that in it whatsoever.
The
I think,
nerves?
Yeah, I don't.
I just meant as a human, like right now, like
No,
in life.
but like I think, but I think I would consider myself sometimes like a nervous performer. Like I think.
Do you get nervous?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can you know, you never really predict when it's going to happen, and then
Right.
just some days you wake up.
Right.
I think probably like a degree of like low level anxiety is always kind of sitting there, and I don't like, maybe it's to do with the I don't know.
Do you
what
get
it-
more nervous on stage or on camera? What do you like more?
What do I
Let's
like
go here.
more?
Yeah. What are your favorite things about each
Each thing.
form of acting?
If there was like a gun to my head, which there is, no,
There's
I would probably go with the. Well, I learned to act on stage, and I think. I don't know. I love acting. Full stop. Wherever, whatever it is, but I think the act of being on stage. I love the fact that once the curtain goes up, it's yours. Like
Yeah.
it's. If something goes wrong with the camera, you're not stopping. Whereas on stage, if the ceiling falls in, you're probably still going to try and keep going. And
And the
I like the
energy
kind of, I like
the
the energy
audience.
of it. I like the kind of latent chaos that comes with like tech rehearsals. I love a first preview, even though they're the most nerve-wracking things on planet Earth. But then there's also, there was something kind of theatrical about the way Ridley Scott shot the film that felt in something that was probably alien to me in terms of the scale of what the whole thing was. There was a familiarity to be found in how he works with actors. What
Yeah.
about you?
There's nothing more beautiful than having a director who can make everything feel very intimate
Yeah.
when the space is so large
Big.
and practical and massive. I feel like we share that with
Yeah.
both of our films. In Gladiator and in Wicked, we both have these massive sets, these massive fight scenes or dance numbers, or
Yeah.
I mean, you know, fight scenes in Wicked, maybe next one.
Oh, really?
But
Yeah.
maybe, we'll see. No, but not quite like yours.
Can
But
you imagine just like
can you imagine Glinda like bites
fully
a
gory,
thing?
like
One of those things that,
Yeah.
that come out in the beginning.
Oh my
Those things
God,
are
yeah.
very scary.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's the greatest gift. I mean, John M. Chu has this incredible way of making it feel like a student film still, you know, and you're outside in Munchkinland and there's like a paparazzi in the sky, and you're like, what's happening?
is yeah.
And yet you still feel so safe, and it feels
Yeah.
so intimate, and that was just such a gift.
When was the last time you were on set filming something before Wicked?
Before Wicked?
Yeah.
Like a movie?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't really done anything.
Really?
That was I had a small cameo in Don't Look Up,
Uh-huh.
and that was really cool. But I was just kind of being a pop star and singing in a different way.
But that's such a
Which is a
crazy
little tiny
thing
little
because it
thing.
feels like. I
So this is
don't
my
know.
first
That's
first
crazy.
gig, really.
That's great because like I just found your performance to be so grounded, but also
Oh,
like
thanks.
I think you were like pushing the envelope in terms of the theatricality of it in a way that I just found really like incredibly watchable and like funny. Like I thought the way that you played somebody who's like like say if I'd never seen Wicked or didn't know what the story was. Even though I didn't like necessarily like your character to begin with, I knew that there was somebody that you deeply loved. And I
Thank
think
you.
that's the most, I think watching someone like Denzel work in Gladiator and
Right.
to compare Glinda and Macronus is a weird thing, but bear with me on
I know,
this.
I think they're very
It's like I
similar.
think
No, I'm kidding.
they'd
I'm
be great
kidding.
at a dinner table, but that kind of thing where you're drawn towards somebody who you don't, like if you were to draw out the characteristics on a sheet of paper, you'd be like, don't necessarily love them, but you're seeing past the thing that you might feel complicated towards as an audience, and I think that's a testament to like the work that you put in and
Oh,
what
thank
you
you.
like what you bring to it. And also like there's proper like the laugh out loud moments in the film that I
Thank
think
you.
look, I've never really done comedy, so whenever I see actors do it, I'm like jealous of it because I think it's a really, really hard thing to do well, and you do it so well in the film.
Thank you. That's so kind.
Not at all.
Thank you very much.
And that's all for today, folks.
And Elsie? Can I call you Elsie?
Well, it's a little bit perky.
I know. I'm gonna call you that.
How did you feel the first time you wore your costume, and did you get to do any of the training in it? And how much do you think it helps you?
Get into it.
Yeah.
I think it was actually a big day because I'd started like the physical training for it, and I'd like initially decided when I'd first been cast, which was very naive. I was like, I'm just gonna go for like normal Gladiator. Like the way my body is the way my body is. And I was like, that's not the film we're making. So went into the gym, but I hadn't tried on the costumes yet. And I think when I put the costumes on, that was the moment for me where I was like, this is miles away from anything I've ever done. I didn't like recognize the way my body was in the clothes that I was wearing. And that created like a distance from
Right.
who you kind of feel like the world expects you to be as a performer. And
Right.
that got me excited. And then we had some like dodgy wig fittings, and I was like, I was like, I don't know. I'm not a fan of a wig, but I was like,
I need to see them.
oh no, nobody has
is
ever. There
That's
was like
incredible. What were they like?
They were big.
They were big?
They were big. And it wasn't to do with like we were working with the best hair and makeup team in the world. It was just I don't have a head for wigs. But it was also a thing when I was looking at it and I started doing the choreography, I was like, I don't want people coming in and fixing the things that have fallen out the back of my head. I want to just go for it. But it was seeing myself in the costume and kind of being in it was one of those moments where I was like,
It's here.
I'm doing Gladiator too, and I'm wearing the thing, and then of course putting on Maximus's
So
breastplate
insane.
is like pretty
I
insane.
screamed. I squealed.
You squealed.
Yeah, I was with my best friend Doug, and we were watching together. We both squealed. Yeah.
Internally I was squealing and then trying to look.
A very iconic moment.
No, it's cool. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. What about you?
What about
Like in terms of
costumes and
like
wardrobe?
yeah, but also stepping into like those costumes are so
Yeah.
iconic. Like when you think of Wicked, you think of like Elphaba's hat, you think of like the pink wardrobe of Glenda's.
Paul Tazwell, our incredible costume designer, who I love him so much. He's so immersed in the world that every single detail, there's a reason. Every single angle of Elphaba's hat was a thoughtful conversation that he and Cynthia Erivo had together. And, you know, my bubble dress, he was consumed with the question of how do I make it seem like it's floating, you know?
Yeah.
And
how does that work?
well, well, it was really light. I had my corset, and then they had snaps. I don't know how many snaps, but there were 16 different layers that got snapped onto my pink bubble dress.
Okay.
And it felt, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it felt really lightweight and just kind of like a bubble itself. And my favorite thing about that costume is just kind of how light it is compared to what happens to her when she's wearing it.
Yeah, right.
And what she has to do in that dress, just kind of the heaviness and the light. It feels like the perfect representation of what Glinda's magic is, which is her ability to take darkness and figure out how to make it light.
Not even just the costume, but it's like a beautifully designed film.
Yeah, even the littlest things, like Glinda's school shirt had little laser cut bubbles on it, but no one can see.
Yeah,
It's
it's
under
just
my
detail
blazer.
for that, right?
Yeah,
Crazy.
but it's those little things that really help you
Yeah.
feel like you're in a real world and in a real place. What were some of those little tiny details that maybe we wouldn't know from watching, but that
I just can't
got to notice?
describe. Like, I've been asked so many times about like to describe what the set was like, and I think the only way I feel like I can accurately describe it is that Ridley built a city. When you're in the Colosseum and you walk out the big gates out of the Colosseum, and I'll remember it as long as I live, and you turn right, there's the arch going into the Via Appia, and then 600 meters down the road is the Emperor's Palace. It's bigger than...
Surreal.
It's totally surreal. And then you're kind of like navigating the imposter syndrome of being like, for one reason or another, this is kind of built because you're at the center of this story. And you're trying, like, you're constantly...
can't
I don't
think
know
about
about you,
that
but
while you're there.
I know, and you really... I think for the most part I was able to navigate that, but then there's other moments where you're like, but this is... But just holy shit.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
know...
How.
And yeah, and how do you carve out human story in something that's so big? And in that instance, you just lean on the people around you. You lean on Ridley Scott. You lean on performances like Denzel. You lean on Connie, Pedro Pascal, and you try and make it feel small. You try and make it feel like intimate, and that's something that I feel I can do. I feel like I can do that bit. But then when you kind of look up, you're like, nope,
You
Don't wanna
did
see
it very
that.
beautifully, and as
Yeah,
huge
thanks.
as the movie is and the things surrounding you, it's,
Mm.
I mean, it really just lives in your performances and in
Thanks.
your eyes and the close-ups, and it's so beautiful.
Mm.
And I love the monologue at the end.
Oh, you
That
do?
was one of my, I was, woo! I applauded it. It was, I love it so much. It's extraordinary.
No, when the
It's-
score comes on.
It's so beautiful and so restrained and so just
Thanks.
perfect and really beautiful.
He used to talk of the dream that was Rome. It was so fragile, you could only whisper it.
How do you find the like running around the world with the film?
Oh, I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had the
We've been
same
like crossing
press
over.
tour.
Yeah, exactly.
We've been on the same exact tour.
Because we are Glicked.
We are Glicked.
We are Glicked.
But we've been crossing paths. You know, we were both in
Yeah.
Australia at the same time.
Yeah.
And like switching schedules.
Yes, exactly.
And now you just came from London, and I'm going to London
Going to
tonight.
London. Yeah.
I feel present. I feel
Mm-hmm.
grateful and excited. It hasn't, everyone has been coming up asking, you know, oh my God, how are you guys? And Cynthia and I are just both like, we're good.
Good, yeah.
We're grateful. We just feel excited for it to come out finally.
Yes,
How
yeah.
are you holding up? How do you feel?
I
How
feel
are you
all
taking
of
care of
the-
yourself?
I feel grateful, but I also feel like I don't know.
Exhausted?
It's exhausted, but it's also like a set of skills that I've never had to exercise. I
Right.
don't know how good I am at the like.
Selling of the thing.
It's
and
not the
thing.
selling. It's actually just the kind of. You spend your life as an actor. Like I feel way safer on a set than I do when it's like Paul is at the center of a big film, and it's really not a negative thing at all. It's actually just something that I'm.
Because you don't think about it as an artist going
you
into it
don't.
at all.
And also, I just have no, like, you have an idea about what running around the world with a huge film is going to look like. But then when you're in the middle of it, you're just trying to find little pockets of yourself that feel recognizable.
Right.
But it's been true of, like, indie films that I've made, or anything. It's like the great oasis in it all is, like, seeing the people that you made the film with.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of are able to hold on to them in the madness of running around the world. But I think the thing that makes me really proud of it all is that, like, for both, I imagine, Wicked and Gladiator 2, is it's like, it's championing the thing that we both adore, which is cinema. And if it, like, does anything to what, like, Barbie and Oppenheimer did last year, like, I remember watching that from afar and being like, this is so brilliant for our industry, because both films couldn't have been more opposite.
Right.
And just to see the
But-
appetite that people had to go to the theater.
Yeah, people became so involved.
Yeah.
It became such an event. And it was just such a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah. Oh.
People falling in love with going to the theaters again.
I remember
feel
like just looking at the like trades and being like, they've done X amount of like, and just getting excited, because I think, like, I don't know, the industry was in a tricky, and has been in a tricky position for X amount of years, and to see that, like, films that couldn't be more disconnected became connected because it was an audience's appetite to go to the cinema, and people, and to remind people that, like, kind of doubt the health of the film industry, that, like, people want to go into a dark room and see these stories.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like our movies are strangely similar.
Do you?
I do. I know that sounds absolutely absurd, but I really do
No,
feel
no.
like they are. Because
In-
there are strong themes of evil versus good,
Uh-huh.
and honestly, in certain ways, dictatorship.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. 100%.
corrupt government.
Yeah. Correct.
You know,
yeah.
it
totally.
feels, they feel thematically intertwined.
And also, like, not to sell the whole Glicked thing, but, like, in terms of a double feature, thematically similar, but then also, like, totally different meals.
We're really selling each other's films
yeah,
quite
exactly.
well.
I think so.
Everyone see
Yeah.
Gladiator too.
See Wicked. Tell me
The double
about
feature.
Cynthia Erivo.
Oh my goodness. I mean, Cynthia Erivo is just extraordinary.
Oh, couldn't agree more.
She's extraordinary in this film. She's extraordinary as a human being. I've been a humongous fan of hers for a long
Yeah.
time. From the moment I saw her sing at the Oscars, I turned to my mom and I just said,
What is?
who,
Yeah.
what, how, what, when? And then, of course, I went down a spiral on YouTube and watched everything she's ever done that I could find, because I missed out on seeing The Color Purple on Broadway.
Yeah.
But I saw all the bootlegs and I saved them all.
Saw the bootlegs.
I was such a massive fan of hers before I got the news that we were doing this together.
Yeah.
Just sharing this experience with her and working with her on this has been truly the honor of a lifetime. I mean,
Yeah.
she's just a once in a lifetime talent. In many lifetimes,
No,
she's
I saw her sing.
truly incredible.
First time I've ever seen her sing like in person was
The
at that
Academy,
Academy Gala, and
yeah.
I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, no, what's going on?
What is going on?
Absolutely.
Like, but then the way she's able to translate that into the film, and also like, I don't know, the chemistry you guys have. Like, my favorite moment in the film, like categorically, is the moment when you both dance together.
At the Ozfest.
That's my
Mine
favorite.
too.
Yeah, I think that's, and also the way that it's shot feels like it's like in a totally different visual language to everything else that we see in the film. And it's just really moving.
Yeah, it was a 10-minute take every time we did it, because we did
Great.
it fully through every single time.
Yeah.
And Alice Brooks, our DP, they had to work on 500 different lighting cues that would
Right.
happen in the scene,
Wow.
so that it could feel that way. And we started with the close-up coverage and worked our way out.
Okay.
And
That,
the
I think
whole
that's
day,
a great way to have done that as well, because
Yeah.
it means that like the first time that you're doing it
But it didn't
is
matter.
when you're like, yeah.
It felt that way every
Did
single
it?
time, and she gave the same performance every single time. And that whole day, you know, it was 13 hours on set. Every single supporting actor and dancer and person in the room was so warm and silent and held so much space, and it was just such a powerful room. Because everyone felt like
Felt what
they
was
were
going on.
a part of it, and they really were. And it's just an extraordinary thing to watch someone leave everything, every bad thing that's ever had happen to them in the center of that room.
But also for Glinda to take that off her, it's just beautiful from both of you. But I think it's always like, when you have that kind of group of essays around you, they'll always be the best kind of metric for, if it's working in the
Right.
room, I think it must have given you great confidence at the moment to be like, I think this will translate
Yeah,
on screen, which it absolutely does.
yeah. The energy was just very palpable, and
Yeah.
it was, you know, how. Do you ever get the feeling when you're watching something back?
Yeah.
Do you watch things when you're forced
do.
to in the audience when you go see the premieres?
No,
Or do you like it? Do you hate it?
I think I would love to get to the point in my career where I don't watch it, because I find it difficult, especially the first time, you know, when you like watch it in the screening room by yourself and you're not getting a sense of the atmosphere. But I also think as a young actor, I think you've got to watch it, because you've got to
have to
know,
learn.
like, yeah, and you've got to go, well, this thing that felt amazing on the day doesn't necessarily translate, and this thing that felt like it was an absolute shambles works. And then I've started to journal more during the actual filming process, so that I'm able to track what the feeling was like in the room when we were making it.
Wow.
So that when I watch it, you're able to kind of cross-reference your experience versus what you think the finished product is. But again, it's subjective, but I think it's a useful tool, and hopefully it will accelerate me to the point where I don't watch it back. But
Do you watch like playback on set
No.
sometimes?
I actually did for the first time on this, just with the fight scenes.
Right.
I think I don't have the capacity to separate
I don't want to know what
my
it's looking
big
like.
face from what is good and what is bad. But there was something special about being right next to Ridley Scott. Like, so the way Ridley
Right.
directs is he's normally slightly offset, and he's in a like horse box with like 8 massive screens. And I remember the first day being summoned, and he's like smoking a cigar in the thing, and I'm like, this is
Very
fucking
cool.
sick.
Yeah.
And he's like watching the way his brain goes. Okay, so for this moment in the battle, look at Chiro's camera, and then and you start to understand how dexterous his mind is and how specific he wants it all.
Because he's editing
be.
as he's watching
He's
it.
editing as
Yeah.
he's watching it, like literally live,
Right.
like live editing. So
Right.
I found like that experience, just as a fan of cinema, to be like just me and Ridley sitting in a box while he's smoking a cigar. I was like, my life is a cartoon.
Do you ever get, watching things back when you do see them, like the same feelings that you had on the day? Because
Sometimes.
when the Ozda scene happens, I get very anxious. I get like,
Really, yeah.
I get the same kind of palpitations.
As you did on the day, like it's something like.
And in
what's a-
Defying Gravity too.
Really?
And I've never experienced anything like that, of course, because this is like kind of my first time doing anything like this. But I do get, it's strange. I've
Like you get
had
a memory of the
physical-
feeling
yeah.
that you had on the day.
It's weird.
That's amazing. I don't get that. I get the moment, you know, when you like, you know the script, so you know what's coming up, and you get, you're like, you know, when
Butterflies.
you get the bit when you're like, okay, here's the day that was hard, or
Yeah. Here's the day.
here's something that I'm excited for. But like, I'm yet to do anything on screen where I'm like, I don't get that like kind of wave of moments of the film that I'm proud of, moments of the film where I'm like, let's get past this bit. And it's so funny how those things generally don't connect to an audience's experience. It's
Right.
like somebody would come up and be like, that scene was great, and you're like, that's my least favorite
Right.
in the film. How dare you?
They
But
can't
what about
tell.
this one? And they've forgotten the, you know. So I think it's like, but sometimes that's a refreshing thing because it reminds you that everybody is having a subjective
Right.
response to something that you make. Like it doesn't belong to, I don't know. I don't feel like after you make the film that it belongs to you anymore. I
Right,
think
no.
it's for
It's the
other
world's
people. It's
then.
the world's.
Have any of the responses in the theater at the screenings really surprised you?
I've only seen it once with
Oh
a
my
live,
gosh,
with a
really?
like big audience.
Cynthia and I have seen it 108,000
Really?
times at this point.
Wow.
I feel like we've seen it so many times.
Whereas,
Once?
yeah, I saw it
What
in
was the
London.
most surprising reaction or thing where people like screamed when we weren't expecting
No, it was just sitting beside Ridley at the premiere. He's like, I sat there and he's just like, any bits that he liked, he'd be like, just elbowing me. I was like, oh
That has
look,
such a- it's
this
just
is
the
the
best thing ever.
coolest. He's who I kind of would love to be when I grow up. This is the guy who's directed Alien. This is the guy who's directed Blade Runner, Thelma and Louise. You name it, he's done
Right.
it all. And I've never come across somebody who truly doesn't care what other people think.
That's very cool.
And that's the thing I think if I'm being honest, that's the thing that I struggle with. It's like sometimes I'm in the pocket where I'm like, this is what I wanted to make and I don't care. And that's probably like 70% of how it used to be, like 45%.
Right.
But that 30% for me as a performer is always way louder than the 70% that's confident.
But it can be that way, can't it?
Do you not find that sometimes it's just like your mind just becomes full of spiders and you're like,
Well,
especially in
how
the
do you
promotion.
find it? Because you're not on social media.
No, I'm not like that, but you still find a way to like
It finds its way.
seek out what people are saying, and you don't gravitate towards the positive, or you just you find the noise, and that's always been true. It's mostly to do with on set. Like it's like watching Ridley work. He's like just 100% backs himself, and whatever comes, whatever goes, it's his baby. And I think I have that more when I'm making it, but when I'm making the film, but it's that 30% that I just think comes with time. You know,
Right.
it just comes with having been there and done it. And what I find so remarkable about him is that he's like, I'm sure he hates people talking about his age, but I think it's fucking remarkable that this man is 86 and he works harder than anybody that I've ever met.
It's so insane.
And he's finishing a movie and he's planning to do 5 other movies and he's wrecking it. And I just think like, for somebody who could be so entitled,
Right.
he's the least entitled person that I know.
He's just all about the
Just all
craft
about the
and
work.
the art, and he just
Yeah.
loves it.
And he'll just relentlessly get what he wants because he just doesn't accept anything other than that.
That's so beautiful.
It's really, really, really beautiful.
How much of a plan, like, does he have it completely mapped out, or is he
Yeah.
open to improv? What
He's
is like the
open
process?
to, he'll always like storyboard it.
Right.
And like he gave me like the most extraordinary rap gift of like 3 original storyboards like in his like drawing. He drew them and gave them to me at rap, and I like cherish those. But he will plan meticulously and then wants you to actively surprise him.
I love that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask how much room for play.
Yeah, and it also comes down to the people that he casts. It's like you're not gonna have. I think any of the actors in that cast come in and do what they're told because you
Right.
don't want. I don't think that's. I don't think your job as an actor is to do what you're told.
No.
I think it's to do.
What feels honest?
It's to have a conversation with the director, both actively, like a real life conversation, but also an active conversation through the work that you're doing. And then I'm a big advocate for like best idea wins.
Love.
If that's the director, or if that's the DP, or if that's you, or the actor that you're working with. And Ridley, I think, champions that. Oftentimes his is the best idea.
Yeah.
But I think he's always wanting you to have the best idea. You know?
That was
Yeah.
one of my favorite things about working with John too.
Yeah.
It was a very similar way. He would come in just completely meticulously planned, shot for shot for shot, like
Yeah.
having an exact idea of what he wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and he would share it with us and show us the plans too,
Yeah.
and then completely just allow for whatever happened in the room.
What's an example of that in the film?
Well, I think there are so many little lines that I didn't expect to make it in, you know, because we would do takes where I would deliver what was written and, you know, would get the exact joke from the original show, and then I would do something silly as a joke, and John would say,
That.
more of that. And
The
then he
bit
would
when you
say,
flop on the bed, do you know, when does that happen? That happens in Popular, right? Or
Yes, when Elfie...
a proper, like, belly laugh.
Oh, thank you.
It's so good.
Thank you.
It's so good.
But
And
I-
that stuff is so hard to do. It's so hard to do.
Thank you. But, you know, it was... I love that play.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he would just say, okay, we'll do
Go
whatever
for
Glinda
it.
wants to do. It's like my
Yeah.
favorite thing ever. Like little bits like not being able to hear through the bubble,
Yeah.
or, you know, that was just like a joke in between that was
Yeah,
made.
yeah,
He was
yeah.
like, please do that. You know, little things that come alive when you spend so much time with the characters that
totally.
then things
And
just
but
sort
it
of
also
come out.
requires a confidence. You know, like it requires you
Confidence, I don't know.
to... No, but a confidence, like not like a...
Freedom, I suppose.
Yeah, I still do think there's like a confidence in
Safety.
it. Yeah, but you know that feeling of like you still have to be brave enough to do it. Even if
To
you're feeling
utter the
safe,
words.
you have to be the person who does the physical gesture. You have to do the thing that's off script.
That's my favorite thing, though.
Yeah.
It's my favorite part.
Yeah.
I love it. And, you know, working with John, that was my favorite part.
Yeah.
He would just say, play.
Go do your thing.
Was the kiss on the forehead planned?
The kiss on the forehead didn't make the film, unfortunately. But that was one of those moments where, you know, it wasn't planned. I still stand by it, and I hope if Ridley ever does a
I stand
director's
by it.
Yeah.
I want the kiss on the forehead.
yeah, Ridley, we need to give the people what they want.
We do.
We need to give. We come to blows in the Coliseum, and there's a moment towards the end of where I was like, fuck, I'm just gonna go for this thing at the end, and it's again over the radio to Ridley after the take, and I was like, Ridley, did you like the kiss on Pedro Pascal's forehead, yes or no? And it's just silence.
Oh, no.
No, and then he goes, I'm afraid I did.
Oh.
But it didn't make the film, but it's one of those moments where it's like, because he has an allergic reaction, Ridley, and he'll say this himself, to anything that feels like overtly sentimental, which I personally love in his filmmaking, that he's always pushing the needle towards away from sentimentality, so hopefully it has like a gut punch later in the film. His I'm afraid I did was probably referencing the fact that he was expecting not to enjoy it, and I think he did.
Wait, speaking of, can you talk about Pedro and your relationship and what your
I
favorite
mean-
parts of working together?
Pedro is an extraordinary actor. I think the challenging thing with this film for all of us, and I think we'd all say this, is we're playing these archetypes. He plays, I think, actually the more kind of traditional hero in the film, and he plays this moral compass, which is such a hard thing to play with such kind of rigor and honesty, that I think is a testament to who he is. And he's so different from who that character is, but also just the way that he is on set with people. He's the center of the shooting day for whoever comes across him. You can lean on him, both on screen and off screen, and I think that's a really important thing to have. And I definitely needed it, considering that I hadn't stepped into something as big as this. We had a lot of time, actually, before we met the rest of the gang in Malta together, and he's just one of my great friends, and I just admire him so much.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah.
He seems like the kind of person that could
He's one of the good guys.
hold the warmest space for
And he
everyone,
just takes
just control the
exactly.
room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really like, you have to be careful with Pedro to like actually return that to him, because he wears it so gracefully that you're like, oh no, you need some
Right.
care here, and all
Right.
of those things.
What's your favorite death in the film because there are some really,
Oh.
there are some
There's
really
many to
specific
choose
ones.
from.
They're really specific, and I watch a lot of horror, and some of
I
this
can't
are
watch
really
horror for love or money.
Really?
I cannot. I saw Long Legs recently.
brilliant.
Fuck me.
It's-
Cannot do it. He's
so good.
It's so, yeah.
That and Late Night with the Devil were my two favorite of the year
I think
for
I-
horror. You have to see it because even just
Nope.
the performances, you have to see it.
Okay, right.
It's so
I'm
brilliant.
gonna say yes, and it's never gonna happen.
It's so brilliant, but isn't that kind of Nicolas Cage's role in that? Isn't that just kind of a
Insane.
dream role?
I mean, he's
That's
unbelievable
fun.
in it.
That's
Yeah.
a great time.
But my favorite death in it,
Yeah, so your favorite death
Uh-huh.
in Gladiator 2.
without giving spoilers, the last death
Yeah.
that we see.
Okay, cool. That was mine as well.
Yeah, it's
I couldn't wait to talk to you about it, and I'm going to talk
it's
to you about it
so-
off camera because
yeah, because I don't want, if you haven't seen it by now,
the last
go
one.
to the theater. The last one that we see in the film.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's a great death.
It's really crazy.
Yeah. I want to ask you, how did you get to the point that you're able to deliver a performance like this? Is it from,
Oh gosh.
I don't know, touring the world, being in front of people and having a comfortability with the active performance? Is it like doing music videos like Thank You Next? Like what?
No.
No, but it has to come from, I don't know, I think those things are like beautifully crafted.
That's very kind.
But like, how do you do the thing that you do in the film? Where did you learn it?
Well, first of all, thank you. But no, it's I have been acting a little, you know, since I was younger, and I did musical theater, and I had a lot of experience on stage, but I really sort of just trained really hard with my acting coach Nancy Banks for a long time. As soon as I heard that they were looking to cast, even just this is even like a year out or
Right.
before I even knew when the date of the audition was.
Yeah.
We just started doing random stuff,
Yeah.
playing around, just because I wanted to be able to have the tools that I needed to be
Yeah.
truthful. Because yes, Glinda's comedic, but there
It
is
has
so
so
much
much
going
to it.
on in
Yeah.
her that I wanted to be able to honor. So I just started to train and practice and play. And I think my acting coach Nancy Banks is first and foremost a healer more than
Right.
anything. She's just extraordinary.
Amazing.
I don't know, it's really interesting what a mind game it is, isn't it?
Oh,
You have to look at all your
Absolutely.
monsters and kind
gotta
of
deal with the spiders in your mind.
really, yeah. You call them spiders, I call them monsters.
Little spiders in my mind. Yeah.
But you have to confiscate them and ask
or
them
just
to
let them.
befriend them.
Oh, I haven't made friends with them yet.
We have to figure out how to get them out of the way when we
Actively
have
running
job
away
to do.
from them.
Yeah.
But I think I'm like, nope, not today.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's that whole journey,
Mm-hmm.
just training for it, I guess, I suppose. I know this is like the most basic question,
Yeah.
and I know the answer because I've read it online, but like, when did you fall in love with acting, and when did you learn that you have the gift that you have? What?
I don't know. I fell in love with this when I did Phantom of the Opera.
Mm-hmm.
I have never felt that kind of adrenaline since that, which is kind of a bizarre thing, but I think it's a testament to like, I was never expecting to be an actor, so the act of being on stage was such a like left field thing.
That's insane.
And it just absolutely felt, I'll never forget, like, we did the, like, Phantom of the Opera, and I remember being wheeled out on this, like, fake organ and fucking not having a clue how to play the organ. And I remember my knees, I remember standing there, and my knees just, like, before I went out, they were just like,
No.
and then getting on the stage, they just went,
Yeah.
I still was, like, deeply nervous, but it just, something was like, I have this, like, weird theory that my parents essentially met on stage doing Pirates of Penzance.
Oh my goodness.
So I have this weird thing that somewhere in my blood or in my heart or head that like the act of being on stage feels like somewhere, it feels like an important place
Right.
to me.
Pirates of Penzance. That's
Pirates
so
of
sweet. Your
Penzance.
parents met doing Pirates of Penzance.
Yeah, Dad was the pirate king and my mum was one of the maids.
That's the best thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, and thank God for that production because I wouldn't
Yes.
be here.
Yeah. Truly.
Yeah. I just want to say I think you're extraordinary in this film.
As
And
Same.
I just
You're
think you're brilliant and one of the most talented people on this planet.
Oh
Like,
my
you
God,
can do
well, I feel
anything,
the
but
same
I
way.
just think you're brilliant and I
You're-
hope people see our films.
Yeah, thank you for doing this, Glicked.
No. Yeah, thanks for
Also-
doing Glicked.
You're utterly brilliant, and I'm so honored to have done this with you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Great. Thanks.